Ares did not believe in unusual things, mostly because unusual things had never bothered to believe in him. His days passed in a predictable rhythm of work, cheap meals, and quiet walks through streets that felt permanently half asleep. That evening was no different until it was. He noticed the sound first. Not a cry, not quite a voice either, but something in between, like a radio trying to remember how to be human. It came from the narrow alley he usually avoided, which was impressive considering he already avoided most things in life. He paused, frowned, and immediately considered leaving. Naturally, curiosity betrayed him. "Great," he muttered, stepping in. "This is how people in documentaries disappear." The alley smelled like damp cardboard and poor decisions. He followed the sound carefully, half expecting a stray animal or someone in trouble. What he found instead made his brain politely shut down for a moment. Behind a stack of broken crates sat a child. At least, it was shaped like one. Small, thin, wrapped in something that tried very hard to resemble clothing. Its head lifted slowly, revealing a face almost human, almost. The eyes were too steady, too aware, like they were reading him instead of looking at him. And the ears, long, gently curved, unmistakably wrong in a way that made perfect sense for something that didn't belong here. Ares blinked, then blinked again as if the creature might politely vanish out of embarrassment. "Okay," he whispered, nodding to no one. "I am either dreaming, hallucinating, or I really need to stop eating street food." The child tilted its head. It made that strange sound again, softer this time. Not threatening, just confused. Ares looked around. No one. No footsteps, no voices, no sign that anyone else had noticed reality had taken a creative turn. He pointed at himself. "You see me, right?" he asked. The child stared. "Good, that makes one of us who understands what's happening." He took a cautious step forward. The child didn't retreat, but its shoulders tensed slightly. Not fear exactly, more like calculation. Ares raised his hands in the universal gesture of "I have no idea what I'm doing, but I mean well." "I'm not whatever you think I am," he said. Which, honestly, I don't even know what that would be. Another step, closer now. Up close, the shimmer of the child's skin became visible, faint like light trapped under glass. Definitely not normal. Comfortingly not normal somehow. "Right," Ares sighed. "So option 1, I leave and pretend this never happened. Option 2, I help you and ruin my already questionable life." The child blinked once, slowly. "Option 2 it is," he decided immediately, like a man with very poor self-preservation instincts. He crouched down, carefully extending his hand. The child watched it with intense focus, as if memorizing the concept of hands. Then, after a moment that felt longer than it should, it reached out. Its fingers were warm. That was the part that surprised him most. "Okay," Ares said, exhaling. "You're real, that's inconvenient." The child made a small sound again, softer now, almost like relief. Ares stood, gently helping it up. It wobbled slightly, clearly unfamiliar with standing or perhaps gravity itself. He instinctively steadied it. "All right," he muttered, already turning toward the street. "We're going home, and by home I mean my place. And by my place, I mean somewhere that absolutely does not allow whatever you are." He paused, glancing down at the child. "We're going to need a better explanation before my landlord sees you," he added. "Preferably one that does not include the word alien." The child looked up at him, silent, observant. Ares sighed. "This is going to be a long night." Ares locked the door with more determination than necessary, as if an extra turn of the key could somehow secure him against interstellar complications. The child stood in the middle of his living room, unmoving, scanning everything with that unsettling calm. His apartment, which had never impressed anyone, not even himself, suddenly felt like a stage for something far beyond its budget. "Welcome," Ares said, gesturing awkwardly, "to the least prepared location for first contact in history." The child tilted its head, focusing on a flickering ceiling light. The bulb dimmed, brightened, then dimmed again as if reconsidering its career choices. "No," Ares pointed at it immediately. "We do not start with breaking electricity. That is already a weak point in my life." The light stabilized, the child blinked. "Good," he nodded. "We're setting boundaries, that's healthy." He moved toward the kitchen, opening cabinets with the confidence of someone who knew he owned nothing useful. After a moment, he held up a packet of crackers. "This," he announced, "is human survival food. It has no taste, no purpose, but it exists. The child watched carefully as he took one and ate it. It leaned forward slightly, observing his chewing with alarming intensity. "Please don't copy everything I do," Aras said mid-bite. "There are habits here you do not want." Still, the child reached out, took a cracker, and placed it in its mouth. It froze, completely. Aras waited. "Are you okay?" he asked. The child remained motionless. "I knew it," he muttered. "First guest I ever have, and I poisoned them with flour." Then, slowly, the child chewed. Its expression didn't change, but something in its posture softened. "That's approval, right?" Aras said. "Or at least survival. I'll take survival." A sudden hum filled the room. Aras turned. His old phone, abandoned on the table, lit up on its own. The screen flickered wildly before settling into symbols he didn't recognize. "Oh, that's not good," he said. "That's never good." The child stepped closer to the phone. The symbols shifted, rearranged, then somehow became words. "I require more," the device displayed. Aras stared. "More what?" he asked. The screen flickered again. "Circular bread discs." Aras blinked twice. "You mean bread, like normal bread?" The child made a soft sound. The phone corrected itself. "Sweet variant, hole in center, emotional satisfaction high." Aras stared at the screen, then at the child. "You're asking for donuts," he said slowly. "You crossed the universe and you want donuts." The child blinked. "Honestly," Aras sighed, grabbing his jacket, "I respect that." Minutes later, he found himself at the only open bakery, trying to explain. "I need something circular," he said carefully. The clerk squinted. "Like Simmet." "No, sweeter, less sesame identity crisis." "Donut." "Yes," Aras said with relief. "Exactly. Thank you for understanding my strange emotional journey." Back home, the child accepted the donut with ceremonial seriousness. It examined it from every angle before taking a bite. This time there was no freeze. Instead, a small, echoing sound escaped it. A laugh slightly delayed, like it had to travel through time before reaching the present. Aras smiled despite himself. "Yeah," he said, "that's the good stuff." The lights flickered again, softer now. The television turned on by itself, displaying a map of stars Aras had never seen. Points of light pulsed gently, forming patterns that felt intentional. He looked at the child. "Let me guess," he said, "you're not alone." The child looked back at him, calm, knowing. The phone lit up once more. "Others observing," it read. Aras exhaled slowly, sinking into his chair. "Of course they are," he murmured. "Why wouldn't they be?" He glanced at the child, now quietly eating, perfectly at ease. "You know," he added, "this is still less stressful than my job." The city felt wrong before Aras understood why. It wasn't louder or quieter. It was precise, like everything had been adjusted half a second out of sync. He stood by the window, watching people move below, their steps just slightly too coordinated, like they were all following instructions they couldn't hear. "Tell me that's not your doing," he said, glancing at the child. The child shook its head gently. Calm, as always, that calm was starting to feel less reassuring. The television flickered again, the star map brighter now. Points of light pulsed in a rhythm that felt closer. Aras rubbed his face. "All right," he muttered. "This is it, isn't it? The part where everything becomes officially not my problem but somehow still is." A soft shift in the air interrupted him. Not a sound, not a movement, just a change like the room had quietly made space for something new. He turned. They were there. Not entering, not arriving, just present. Several figures stood across the room, their forms steady, their presence undeniable. They looked human at first glance, too human, almost, but the illusion slipped quickly. Their ears were long, elegant, unmistakable. Their expressions were composed, observant, like they had already seen every possible outcome and chosen this one. Aras froze. "I didn't hear the door," he said. No one answered. "Good," he nodded nervously. "That would have been concerning." The child stepped forward, moving toward them without hesitation. One of the women knelt slightly, her gaze softening as the child reached her. No words passed, but something did, something clear enough that Aras felt it without understanding it. He cleared his throat. "So," he began, gesturing vaguely, "you've been watching. That's normal, totally normal behavior, very neighborly." One of them turned her attention to him. Her eyes held no threat, no warmth either, just clarity. It was somehow worse. "You assisted," a voice said, not spoken but understood. Aras blinked. "Yes, I did, mostly by accident." A pause. Intent was not accidental. He shifted awkwardly. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds much more impressive than it felt. Another silence, shorter this time. Observation complete, the voice continued. Conclusion reached. Aras raised an eyebrow, and that conclusion would be. The child looked back at him. For the first time, there was something unmistakable in its expression. Trust. They're staying? Aras asked. Contact initiated, came the answer. He let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. Of course it is, he murmured. Because helping one lost kid obviously leads to whatever this is. He glanced toward the kitchen, then back at them. This might be a bad time, he said, but I still have donuts. A brief pause passed between them. Then, just for a second, one of the women's expressions shifted. Subtle but real, amusement. Aras blinked. Okay, he pointed, that I understand. That's universal. The tension in the room eased, not disappearing, but changing. The unknown didn't feel smaller, but it felt possible. He looked at the child again, then at the others. So what happens now? He asked. Now, the voice said, we begin. Aras nodded slowly. Right, he said. No pressure then, just first contact, no big deal. He paused, then sighed. I'm going to need more donuts. Morning arrived like it had signed a contract to behave normally, and for a few minutes, it almost succeeded. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, the kettle sat quietly, and Aras stood in his kitchen, staring at a room that now contained beings from another world calmly examining a toaster. Just to clarify, he said, arms crossed, that device is not a portal. It burns bread. That's its entire personality. One of them held the toaster closer, as if reconsidering its life choices. Heat without visible flame, the voice echoed in his mind. Primitive, efficient. Primitive? Aras scoffed. This thing has betrayed me emotionally at least 6 times. Behind them, the child, no, not just the child anymore, moved with a confidence it hadn't had before. It looked at Aras, and this time, the silence between them felt full rather than uncertain. You're leaving, he said. It wasn't a question. The child nodded. Aras exhaled slowly. Yeah, that makes sense. You didn't exactly take a wrong turn on the way to school. A faint flicker crossed its expression, something like understanding. The room shifted subtly again, not in space but in feeling. The others stepped closer, their attention no longer just observation. It was acknowledgement. You altered outcome, the voice said. Aras shrugged. I gave a kid crackers and bad advice. Let's not oversell it. Kindness without directive, the voice continued. Rare. He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. Well, don't get used to it. I'm usually very good at ignoring things. A pause. Noted, the voice replied. He smiled despite himself. Outside, the city continued moving, unaware that its definition of normal had quietly expired. Inside, everything felt suspended between goodbye and something larger. So, Aras said, clapping his hands once, before anyone disappears dramatically or turns into light or whatever your exit strategy is, there's one important question. They waited. Do you actually like donuts? He said, or was that just a diplomatic move? For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the child made that strange, echoing laugh again, clearer now, more cert. One of the women tilted her head slightly. Acceptable, the voice answered. High praise, Aras nodded. I'll put that on the bakery's review. The air began to shift again, more noticeably this time. Not intrusive, not violent, just inevitable, like a tide pulling back. The child stepped closer to him. For a second, Aras hesitated, then placed a hand gently on its shoulder. You'll be okay? He asked. A pause. Then carefully, the child mirrored something it had learned. It nodded. Aras smiled, quieter now. Good, try not to get lost again. I'm not doing this twice. Another flicker of that almost smile. The light in the room bent, not bright, not blinding, just different. One by one, their forms softened, fading not into nothing but into somewhere else. The child was the last. It looked at him one final time, then it was gone. Silence settled in, real this time. The kettle clicked softly in the background as if nothing had happened. Aras stood there for a while, staring at the empty space. Well, he finally muttered, that was mildly life-changing. He walked to the table, picking up his phone. It flickered once, then returned to normal. No symbols, no messages, just the same old screen. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. For the first time in a long while, the world didn't feel small. Later, as he stepped outside, the city looked exactly the same. But he didn't. A man passed him, bumping his shoulder slightly without noticing. Aras turned, watching him go, then shook his head with a small smile. "Hey," he called out suddenly. The man stopped, confused. "You dropped this," Aras said, handing him something he hadn't even realized he was carrying. The man blinked. "Oh, thanks. No problem," Aras replied. He continued walking, hands in his pockets, gaze a little sharper, a little wider. Above, somewhere far beyond sight, something watched back, not testing anymore, just remembering. Aras glanced up briefly, then smirked. "Next time," he said quietly, "bring better snacks."